After a crazy week of upsets, we're on to the second week of the June Joust qualifiers. If I'm being honest with you, I don't know what to expect anymore. Everything went so randomly last week. It goes without saying that right now I'm kind of feeling pretty boomed. I feel like I might as well just flip a coin to pick the games at this point. My odds are probably just as good. You know what? That gives me an idea. Along with my Preds, we'll see what a coin flip ends up picking. If I get less games right than a coin flip, I think that would make for some pretty good content. But in all seriousness, let's quickly highlight last week's key matches and what I thought of them real quick. Starting with the Dragons and Hunters, I can't say it went the way I expected it to. I favor the Dragons, yes, but it was a little crazy to see them 3-0 like that. It's almost like these two are following the same script as last year when it comes to their rivalry. In my opinion, this game was maybe a bit closer than the score implied, but the Dragons definitely did take care of business. Now, if only they beat the Spark, I'd be feeling very confident in them right now. Moving on to the Hunters and Fusion game, we had the Hunters getting back at Philly for the last time as they even up the head-to-head at 1 apiece. While the game definitely went back and forth, Chengdu seemed to have the advantage. They made better use of the Reaper in my opinion, and Leave absolutely clapped on Echo. Philly had a tough time adjusting to this new meta, I feel like. They struggled all weekend pretty much. Generally speaking, I definitely do have question marks about both of these teams since they were both kind of inconsistent. And lastly is Houston versus Florida, which was yet another key match I was very wrong about. I felt a little more confident in Yaki to make the plays, but it was actually Dante who did the better job with production. His Echo was off the charts. Alongside that, Houston made some great adjustments after their loss to Atlanta. They realized that double shield was probably the play. Meanwhile, Florida decided to play more dive after initially playing a lot of double shield against London, and I think teams are just really experimenting a lot currently. I'm sure we'll see more of these sudden adjustments as the week rolls on. That's all I have to say about the games I put a lot of emphasis on last week, so let's get on to the predictions for this week. Let's talk London versus the reigning May Melee champion, boy that sounds really weird to say, Dallas Fuel. This hero pool hits the Fuel DPS kind of hard in my opinion. Sombra and Tracer were two pivotal components of their tournament run. Some might argue this will be tough for Dallas to adjust to, but I don't really see it as much of a problem at all, especially against London. Sparkle and Doha have proved to be a flexible duo. I get the feeling they might figure something out with like Reaper, Echo, or maybe Soldier 76. And so long as Fearless can still lock in the Winston, you're pretty much in every game you play. It feels like hit scan is being forced a bit more, so that could be an issue. I doubt it because of what Dallas did during the May Melee. Plus, I have no idea if Pine is with this team yet or not. I'm assuming he's not, but maybe he plays on ping anyway. But regardless, I think Dallas has it. It really won't matter. Not having Pine could be a problem against like a better team in the future, let's say, but it's not something to worry about with the Spitfire. It's a team you could probably handle without him. They're a winless team who can't seem to find their footing, and their dive is quite inconsistent. They had a few bright spots last week, but it was nothing that truly impressed me. I gotta go with a quick and easy 3-0 for the Fuel. As I've mentioned before, London does not have a very favorable June Joust schedule, and I'm not really expecting them to make any noise as a result. They're severely outmatched, but let's see what the coin flip has to say. Dallas it is. Not even a coin flip is bold enough to pick London here, I guess. Closing out Friday evening is what could be yet another boring match, unfortunately. Gladiators versus Titans. There's only two bright spots I can truly think of here. One is that neither team has played yet, so they could potentially show us something different or fun compared to everybody else. And two, we get to see the debut of the new Vancouver Titans main tank. A strong start out of him could be a promising sign if you're a Vancouver fan, so watch the 1v1 matchup with Muse very carefully in terms of the main tank department. Beyond that though, it kinda seems like a blowout on paper. Unless the Gladiators get off to a slow start, I'm expecting them to get the sweep here. I kinda believe the Titans are going to stay bottom feeders for the foreseeable future, even if the meta changes and they make slight alterations to their lineup. They're a long way off from being any sort of threat. But maybe the coin flip sees it differently. What do you got for us? I guess not. I guess they're saving the saucy predictions for later. On to the next one. And boy oh boy, we start the APAC games off with one heck of a doozy. That was sarcasm, by the way. The LA Valiant play the Shanghai Dragons. Maybe we'll get entertainment in the form of a speed run. Maybe the Dragons can PB or set the new world record. You know the rules around here. Until I see noteworthy progress, I'm basically giving the Valiant little to no chance every single time. I get that hero pulls have made a bunch of upsets a possibility now, but this seems pretty unlikely. Sure, the Dragons were rather inconsistent last week, but they still beat Chengdu, which has to count for something. If they can 3-0 the Hunters, they should beat the Valiant no sweat. No hate to the Valiant, but I have little to no faith. This especially goes for an unfavorable matchup like this one. The Dragons win 3-0 without much of a problem. But what do you have to say, Coin Flipper? Oh wow, getting a little crazy, are we? I swear, if one of the first 3 games are an upset, I will lose my mind. The other Saturday APAC matchup in this short week is the NYXL versus Seoul Dynasty. I'm going to pencil this one in as a key match. Seoul should theoretically be the favorites, but we've seen what hero pools can do to this group in the past. And let's not forget that the NYXL seem to be in a very similar situation. They had such a crazy high against Philly, but a ridiculous low in their loss to the Guangzhou Charge. It's like I'm seeing Season 3 Seoul's story play out for a different franchise. It's risky no matter who you choose. The NYXL, they proved themselves but are also inconsistent. Meanwhile, Seoul don't have access to the Tracer, who was a staple in the comps they ran pre-hero pools. That forces Prophet onto the Echo, and I'm not entirely sure if he can produce the same way he does on Tracer. The battle of Prophet and Fitz versus a red-hot Flora and Feather will be the matchup to watch. But not gonna lie, I still kind of favor Seoul through all of it, even with their question marks. New York still haven't totally earned my trust, and I think there's a way for Seoul to get the advantage. If they choose to play Orisa comps, I immediately favor them. In my opinion, it's their tank line's biggest strong point. Honestly, even if Gesture just doesn't feed on Winston, I still kind of like the Seoul tank situation a bit more. It comes with very little confidence, but I am picking the boys in black and gold to win 3-2. The unpredictability of the NYXL makes me think there's a wide range of outcomes, so I'll say this is a good game just to be safe. Let's see what the coin flip has to say. Interesting. This is one I could absolutely see me losing to the coin flip. Next, we have yet another game that shouldn't be too close on paper, the London Spitfire versus the Houston Outlaws. As I mentioned at the start of this video, Houston showed really good adaptations last week. They learned what their most effective comp was very fast, and that could mean trouble for the Spitfire. Remember how they got absolutely rolled by Atlanta? Well, I could see a very similar outcome playing out if the Spitfire decide to continue committing to dive. It never really got anything done, I feel like. It was very ineffective. But let's say they do make some changes. Could it make much of a difference at all? I would venture to say no. Maybe they play a little better on a map-to-map basis, but nothing that makes you say, oh yeah, the Spitfire have this one. As a result, I am predicting a sweep in favor of the Outlaws. Houston figured something out with Dreamer on Orisa, and if Dante can play the way he did against Florida, then it would take a miracle for the Spitfire to win. Much like the Valiant, I refuse to believe in a winless team until they show me they have what it takes. But what do you say, coin flip? Wow, it must really hate London. Not even a coin flip believes in them, and there's a 50-50 chance it will. Big rip. Next up, the Shock make their return to play as they take on the Defiant. Yeah, if I'm being honest, the Shock should be especially favored this time around. Under normal circumstances, you already prefer them, but now it should feel especially easy to choose them. For starters, the Defiant were largely unimpressive during their first week of qualifiers. It was bad enough to see them struggle to pull off a win against Paris, but then they were pretty uninspiring in their loss to Boston. I mean, they got outplayed big time. All of it leads to self-doubt, and that is not something you want to be suffering from against the Shock. They will eat you alive, but that's not the only issue. Recently, Logix came down with COVID-19, and Toronto did confirm that a few other people within the org are dealing with it as well. Having your team worry about confidence issues plus not being in great health makes your life even more difficult. All of that combined makes me think the Shock take it 3-1. Realistically, this could easily be a sweep, but I'm going to bite the bullet and say Toronto shows some improvements. I have faith in KDG. He has proven himself on multiple occasions on Philly. Him and the team this year could come out and make some better decisions. Or maybe the Shock come out of the gates a little sluggish. Either way, it's still a Shock win. But does the coin flip agree with me? It would seem they do. To finish off Saturday, we've got an interesting one. The Reign versus the Gladiators. This will be my second key match of the week. I'm fairly curious to see if the Reign can keep the ball rolling. They beat the Outlaws convincingly, which I found very impressive. They looked good out there. There is serious potential for them to have a 4-0 qualifier, but it really depends on what the Glads show us. They have the film to study, and the Reign have yet to see them play. In theory, the Gladiators do have the element of surprise. But the Reign have cleared the hurdle of beating above-average competition very early on this year. Assistant coach Unter seems to be working some magic from what I've heard. His philosophies have truly helped. Plus, this Atlanta team feels very confident. They're working well in unison. I think Kai and Pelican, they have DPS on lockdown, and I think Gator and Hawk are really making this Orisa Diva comp of theirs work. They've hit their groove. Now the Gladiators are the team we have to worry about. They're the ones who need to prove themselves. And I don't know if this is the right meta for them. Most of their players should be fine in theory, but I'm a bit concerned about what those tanks of theirs do. If they choose to run dive, they might meet the same fate as Houston, but if they play Orisa Sigma, they might not be able to match up. From a general standpoint, I do prefer Space and Muse over Hawk and Gator. They have the higher ceiling without a doubt. But with the way the meta is trending, the Reign have a chance to assert their dominance in the tank department, and that is what I think is going to happen as the Reign win the series 3-2. The tanks will lead the way alongside Pelican, who I do not feel comfortable going against right now because that man is on a tear. The Gladiators might throw off their opposition with a unique comp of their own because that is what DP is known for doing. Perhaps they run Mirror on the Doomfist or something, but I still do feel more confident in Atlanta right now. They are finally living up to their potential. It could go either way, but I'm going to take the risk and trust in the Reign to get the job done. But how are you feeling about this one coin flip? Oh, and yet another one of my 50-50 games, the coin flip is taking the other team. I'm sure this is going to turn out wonderfully. Now for Sunday. First up is the NYXL versus the Valiant. While I don't find it likely, I feel anything could happen in this series. It could get pretty crazy because, again, the NYXL were kind of all over the place last weekend, and they're preparing for Seoul a lot more, you'd have to imagine. If the Valiant break out some stuff they aren't expecting while maybe not taking them all that seriously, it could be a bit closer than the NYXL envisioned. The likelihood of them losing the series is very small, but I could totally see them maybe dropping a map or something like that, or tying one. But in the end, their far stronger support and tank lines will lead them to a 3-1 victory. This very well could be a sweep because it is the Valiant, but I'll give them a map for the heck of it. Why not? These qualifiers have been pretty crazy, so you never know what could happen. But how do you feel, coin flip? You really like the NYXL this week, huh? The final matchup in APAC this week is the Shanghai Dragons versus the Seoul Dynasty, and this is going to be key match number 3. This one could be pretty hype. If Seoul decide this is going to be one of those weeks where they truly pop off, then the Shanghai Dragons could be in big trouble. Their inconsistencies last week, they were kind of concerning. Sweeping one team then getting swept by another in the same week is a fairly rocky start. How the Dragons change their strategy and approach could very much dictate if they have the advantage or if they're fighting an uphill battle. Last week, they kind of stubbornly stuck to the same thing against the Spark. What they need to do now is play some of the stuff that the other top teams were doing well. Try out the Reaper, consider playing more Brig, maybe a bit more Double Shield. If the Dynasty come out on Double Shield, they have to change things up or they are going to lose in my opinion. I'm watching the tanks very closely, but of course, there's also reason to be curious about the DPS. Not just for the star-studded matchup, but also for the possibility of seeing Who Are You. The Dragons signed him earlier this week. He seems like a weird pickup, but Shanghai made it seem like he could be an important piece of their roster moving forward, so watch out for him potentially. The Shanghai vs Seoul rivalry is about to get renewed in what could be their wackiest meeting yet thanks to the randomness of the June Joust tournament. I really don't know what to think of this game simply because of the randomness factor. It might actually be worth it to go with whoever the coin flip picks. As for me, I'm going to take a wild guess and predict that the Dragons win 3-2. I have a ton of trust in the Dragons thanks to their talent and what they pulled off in Season 3. I believe in them to make the necessary adjustments to thrive. This season has been a bit tougher than anticipated for them, but it doesn't mean they can't improve enough. And how do you feel about this coin flip? You want to go against me? I guess not. I'm going to take this as a sign that things are about to go horribly wrong, so pick Seoul while you still can, folks. Anyway, as we move back into North America, we have the Toronto Defiant versus the Houston Outlaws up first, and I kind of see it following a similar trend to the Defiant's game against the Shock. They didn't look too hot last week, and they have a few cases of COVID within this team, and they have a tough matchup to deal with. So, that kind of has certain doom written all over it. Houston seems to be a lot more willing to play slower-paced bunker comps, which the Defiant got totally pummeled by against Boston. As a result, I'm very worried about them. This could be a really tough stretch where they see a dramatic fall in the standings. As mentioned previously, I believe in this group of guys to figure some stuff out, so I really do believe they'll take a map at some point within the weekend, but I suspect they're only going to showcase minor improvements given the level of competition they'll be up against. The Outlaws prove to me they are faster at learning from their mistakes and that the Defiant are at the mercy of a brutal schedule. But what do you think, Mr. Coin? Wow. I guess it got tired of me calling it out for not being risky. If the Defiant won under all of these bad circumstances, that would be quite impressive. Now we move on to the Reign versus Titans. On paper, it goes without saying that the Reign are heavy favorites. In all fairness, the Titans pulled off an upset against this team in a similar situation last year, and they have a new main tank who could be a great playmaker for them. But if we're being honest, it's not like in 2020. The Reign are in a much more confident state of mind currently, and the Titans are still trying to piece some things together. You have a new main tank, which means adapting to a different playstyle and form of communication. That's a whole lot to ask for when you are playing a team on the upward trend. I gotta go with the Reign in a quick 3-0 sweep. Vancouver have to take baby steps before they're ready to hit the ground running, and I don't foresee them getting the first win just yet. But what do you say, coin flip? Do you agree with me? Yep, no extreme upset to be found here. And now we have the final game of the week. It also happens to be a key match and the game I'm looking forward to the most. That's right, it's a May Melee rematch between the Shock and Fuel. The Shock and Revenge games are always a treat to watch. They've made a habit of popping off big time, but this might not be an easy feat. Not having Tracer or Reinhardt in the hero pool definitely hurts their maximum playmaking potential, but at the same time, I would say the bans in place arguably hurt Dallas a bunch too because again, they rely so much on Tracer and Sombra. Either way, we could see a lot of fast-paced and bloodthirsty action, much like the first meeting between these two. If they both opt into Winston dive comms, things could get crazy. But if we go in the direction of Orisa comms, I feel the Shock are in a better position to win the set. Smurf is such a great Orisa player, and I don't really believe that Fearless can get the same level of value out of her. Him not on the Winston hurts their chances in my opinion, but even if he does play Winston, he might get countered a good amount of the time. In fact, I kind of expect it to happen because it's the Shock we're talking about. Learning from their mistakes is what they do best, so I'm not going to be surprised at all if they find a way to slow down Fearless at least a tiny bit. Generally speaking though, pretty much every matchup in this game requires your attention because there are superstars all over the place. Besides main tanks, I'm really keeping my eyes glued on flex DPS. I'm curious to see how Nero stacks up to Doha in the Echo duel potentially. I, like most of you watching, absolutely favor Doha, but I kind of dig Nero's Echo too, and if the Shock come in with the right game plan, Nero might be able to come out on top. We also have to keep in mind that we don't know what the Shock plan to do at DPS in general. I suspect that Nero plays for that Echo role, but what about Hitscan? What about Glister? Will he continue to sit on the bench despite Striker not having access to his best hero anymore? That might prove to be a difference maker as well. There's a whole lot of factors that go into such a game. Are Dallas going to cool off? Will the Shock come out of the gate looking sluggish? We have yet to see either team playing this new meta as well, which is not making it any easier to pick. So many questions, but not many immediate answers. That is why I plan to go with my gut this time. In what hopefully ends up being a fantastic game, I have the Shock taking it home 3-2. There's no real evidence I have to make this pick seem viable. I just think the hero pool works slightly more in their favor. Plus, they pretty much never lose to the same team twice in a row. It's a very rare occurrence. They are quick to adjust, and I feel comfortable picking them because of that. There's no way it's going to be easy, but I suspect they'll deliver as per usual. And now, for the final time, we turn to the coin flip. Shock or Dallas? Who's it gonna be? Dallas it is. I swear, I'm not staging any of this by the way. I recorded all of these in one go. The computer generated numbers just disagree with me anytime I see a game is 50-50, I guess. But that is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. How are you feeling about my Preds this week, and who do you have winning? Let me know down in the comments. While you're at it, tell me what you think about this new coin flip feature I'm trying out. If the June Joust continues to be crazy, I might continue to use it. We'll see though. Anyway, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you enjoy prediction content. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.